He had 6 hours to save his billion-dollar company from total destruction. His engineers had failed. His security team had gone home. And the only person left in the building was pushing a mop. What happened next will make you cry and believe in miracles again. Let me tell you about the night Marcus Reynolds learned that pride comes before the fall. It was a Tuesday evening in Seattle, and Marcus sat alone on the 52nd floor of the Sterling Tower, staring at screens that were supposed to show him his victory. Instead, they were showing him his destruction. For 15 years, Marcus had poured his soul into building Apex solutions. 15 years of 18-hour days, missed birthdays, sacrificed friendships, all for this moment. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, he was supposed to sign the deal that would change everything. $30 billion. The kind of number that makes you forget where you came from. But that number meant nothing now. At 8:47 p.m., his computer had flickered. Just once. A small red notification in the corner of his screen. Marcus had ignored it, too focused on rehearsing tomorrow's presentation. Then another alert appeared. And another. Within 3 minutes, every monitor in his executive suite was screaming warnings at him. His company was being destroyed from the inside. Someone had broken into their network with surgical precision, deleting customer databases, wiping financial records, dismantling everything that made Apex Solutions valuable. Marcus watched in horror as 15 years of work vanished into digital darkness. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone. He called his head of security. No answer. His chief technology officer. Voicemail. His entire team had left hours ago, celebrating what they thought would be their last quiet night before the biggest deal of their lives. Marcus was alone. He stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Below him, Seattle glowed with 1,000 lights. People down there were laughing, eating dinner, watching their children sleep. They had no idea that up here, in this glass tower reaching toward the clouds, a man's entire world was collapsing. The city doesn't stop for your pain, Marcus whispered to his reflection. It doesn't even slow down. He thought about calling the investors, but what would he say? That he'd failed? That the company they were about to pour billions into was currently being gutted by hackers? They'd run. They'd all run, and he'd be left with nothing but the memory of what could have been. Marcus slammed his fist against the glass. The sound echoed in the empty office, swallowed by silence. That's when he heard it. Footsteps, slow and steady, coming down the hallway. Then the gentle squeak of wheels rolling across polished floors. He turned confused. Who could possibly be here at this hour? A woman appeared in his doorway. She was pushing a cleaning cart, wearing a navy blue uniform with building services embroidered on the pocket. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple braid, and she looked to be in her late 30s. When she saw Marcus standing there in the darkness, surrounded by flashing red screens, her eyes widened. "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of an accent he couldn't quite place. "I didn't realize anyone was still working. I can come back later." Marcus let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Don't worry about it. You're not interrupting work. You're just watching me lose everything I've ever cared about." Most people would have apologized again and left. Most people would have wanted nothing to do with a stranger's breakdown. But this woman didn't leave. Instead, she took a small step into the office, her eyes moving from Marcus to the screens behind him. "That looks like a coordinated attack," she said quietly, studying the patterns on his monitors. "Someone's inside your system right now, stealing and destroying as they go." Marcus stared at her. "What did you just say?" The woman pointed at one of his screens. "See those error codes? That's not a random system failure. That's deliberate. Someone with access is taking you apart piece by piece." "How do you know that?" Marcus asked, taking a step toward her. She met his eyes with a calm, steady gaze that seemed out of place for someone holding a mop. "Because I used to stop people from doing exactly this before my life took a different path." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Hope, maybe, or just desperation. He looked at this woman in a cleaning uniform who was telling him things his expensive security team couldn't figure out. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elena," she replied. "Elena Alvarez." He studied her face for a long moment. His engineers were gone. His experts had failed. His company was dying, and he had absolutely nothing left to lose. Sometimes when we're drowning, we'll grab onto anything that floats. "Can you help me?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elena set down her cleaning supplies and walked fully into his office. "I can try," she said simply, "but I'll need complete access to your systems." Marcus didn't hesitate. He stepped aside and gestured to his computer. "It's all yours." As Elena sat down at his desk, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, neither of them knew that this moment would change both of their lives forever. Neither of them knew that sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expect. They're the ones we never even notice were there. Elena's fingers touched the keyboard, and in that instant, something shifted in the universe. A CEO who thought he knew everything was about to learn from a woman the world had forgotten. A woman who had lost everything was about to get a second chance. And a company that was dying in darkness was about to find light in the most unexpected place. The city below kept moving, unaware that high above in a glass tower, two strangers were beginning a journey that would prove one simple truth. Sometimes our greatest blessings come disguised as ordinary people doing invisible work. Sometimes a miracle we're waiting for is standing right in front of us, holding a mop and wearing a uniform we train ourselves not to see. Let me tell you what Marcus didn't know about Elena Alvarez. 6 years ago, she was one of the most brilliant cybersecurity minds on the West Coast. She worked for a prestigious firm in San Francisco, protecting Fortune 500 companies from digital threats. She was respected, admired, and on the fast track to becoming a partner before she turned 40. Then her daughter got sick. Leukemia, the aggressive kind that doesn't care about your plans or your career or your dreams. Elena left everything behind to fight for her child's life. She moved back to Seattle where her mother could help, spent 3 years living between hospital rooms and treatment centers, watching her beautiful girl fade and somehow, miraculously, come back. Her daughter survived, but Elena's career didn't. The medical bills were crushing. Insurance covered some, but not the experimental treatments that actually saved her daughter's life. Elena emptied her savings, maxed out credit cards, and when that wasn't enough, she took whatever work she could find. Cleaning offices at night paid the bills, and let her be home during the day when her daughter needed her. The technology world had moved on without her. 3 years away might as well have been 30. Companies wanted someone current, someone without gaps in their resume, someone who didn't have to leave work early for doctor's appointments. So Elena became invisible. She pushed her cleaning cart through offices where she used to be the expert everyone consulted. She wiped down desks where people left their passwords on sticky notes. She emptied trash cans full of printed documents that should have been shredded. She saw every security flaw, every vulnerability, every mistake. And she said nothing because nobody asked the cleaning lady for her opinion. Until tonight. Until Marcus Reynolds, desperate and alone, actually looked at her and listened. Now Elena sat at his computer, and it was like coming home after years of exile. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, typing commands she thought she'd never use again. Marcus watched in amazement as code filled the screen, as she navigated through his company's infrastructure with absolute confidence. "Your backup servers," Elena said without looking up. "Are they on a separate network?" "Yes," Marcus answered, completely isolated. "Why?" For the first time since the attack began, Elena smiled. "That's your lifeline. Whoever did this didn't touch your backups. That means we can rebuild everything." Marcus felt hope flicker in his chest like a candle in the wind. "Are you serious? We can actually fix this." "We can try," Elena said, "but I need unrestricted access to everything, and I need you to trust me completely." Marcus pulled out his master security card, the one that opened every door and every system in the entire building. He handed it to her, without hesitation. "You have it," he said. "Just please, don't make me regret this." Elena looked up at him, and for a brief moment, he saw something flash in her eyes. Not arrogance. Something deeper. Determination born from fighting battles most people couldn't imagine. "I won't," she promised. "But when this works, remember who helped you tonight." "I will." Marcus said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. They rode the elevator down to the basement in silence. The server room was cold, filled with a hum of machines and rows of blinking lights. Elena walked between the tall equipment racks like a surgeon examining a patient on the operating table. "We're going to bring it back to life," she said. "But I need 6 hours, maybe 7, and I need you to trust every decision I make." "Done," Marcus replied. For the first time in his entire career, he wasn't the one in control. And somehow, standing in that basement with a woman he'd just met, that felt okay. Elena worked like someone possessed. Her focus was absolute, her movements precise. Every keystroke had purpose. Every command was deliberate. Hours melted away. They drank terrible coffee from the vending machine. They barely spoke, but there was something comforting about not being alone, about having someone fighting beside you when the whole world felt like it was ending. Around 3 a.m, Marcus brought her a sandwich from the all-night deli across the street. Elena looked up, surprised. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "When was the last time you ate?" Marcus asked. Elena thought about it and realized she couldn't remember. "Thank you," she said, and something in her voice made Marcus want to know her story, to understand how someone with her skills ended up pushing a cleaning cart. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure. Why didn't you go back to tech work after whatever happened?" Elena was quiet for a moment, her hands still moving across the keyboard. "My daughter was sick," she finally said. "Cancer. We beat it, but it cost everything we had and then some. By the time she was well enough for me to work again, the industry had moved on. Nobody wants to hire someone who's been out of the game for 3 years." "That's insane," Marcus said. "You're clearly brilliant." "Brilliant doesn't pay medical bills," Elena replied without bitterness. "Just stating a fact. Cleaning offices does." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. Shame, maybe, for all the times he'd walked past people like Elena without seeing them, for all the times he'd judged someone's worth by their job title instead of their character. Around 4 a.m, something changed. The red alerts on the monitors began disappearing. One by one, systems started coming back online. Files that had been deleted were reappearing like ghosts returning from the dead. "Wait," Marcus breathed, afraid to believe it. "Is this really happening?" Elena leaned back in her chair, exhaustion and satisfaction mixing on her face. "Your company is breathing again, Mr. Reynolds. It just needed someone who refused to give up on it." Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. He was 43 years old, a CEO, a man who prided himself on being strong. But in that moment, relief washed over him so powerfully that he couldn't hold it back. "How do I thank you?" he asked, his voice shaking. "You don't," Elena said gently. "You just remember this feeling. Remember what it's like to need help. Remember that the people who save us aren't always the ones we expect." As dawn began creeping through the small basement windows, the system flashed a final message. Restoration complete. Marcus stared at those words. His company was saved. The deal could still happen. Everything he'd worked for was still possible. But somehow, that wasn't what mattered most anymore. He turned to Elena, this woman who had appeared out of nowhere when he needed someone most desperately. "No," he said. "We're alive. Together." When his employees started arriving that morning, they found something strange. Their CEO was sitting in the basement server room with a woman in a cleaning uniform, both of them drinking coffee and smiling like old friends, surrounded by glowing screens that showed a system miraculously brought back from death. Nobody knew that this woman had just saved the entire company. Nobody knew she'd changed their boss's life forever. They just saw a janitor and wondered why she was there. But Marcus saw her, really saw her, and he was about to make sure everyone else did too, because sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones we walk past every single day without noticing. The next morning, Marcus called an emergency meeting with his senior leadership team. The boardroom filled with confused executives, all wondering why they'd been summoned so urgently. Rumors had spread to the office about something happening overnight, but nobody knew the full story. Marcus stood at the head of the long glass table. Beside him stood Elena, still wearing her Navy uniform, her hands clasped in front of her. You could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She didn't belong in rooms like this, and she knew it. "I want to introduce someone," Marcus began, his voice clear and strong. "This is Elena Alvarez. Last night, while all of you were at home, our company was attacked. Someone tried to destroy us from the inside, and this woman, she saved us." The room went silent. Executives looked at each other in confusion. Some looked at Elena with barely concealed skepticism. Richard Chun, Marcus's chief technology officer, leaned back in his chair. He was a sharp man in an expensive suit with an expression that said he wasn't impressed. "You're telling us that the cleaning lady fixed what our entire IT department couldn't handle?" Marcus didn't blink. "That's exactly what I'm telling you. And starting today, Elena is going to lead our new cybersecurity division. She reports directly to me." The murmurs around the table grew louder. Richard's jaw tightened. "This is insane, Marcus. You're putting our entire company security in the hands of someone we know nothing about. No background check, no verification credentials, nothing." "I know what I saw," Marcus replied firmly. "I know she worked through the night to save this company when no one else could. That's all the credential I need. This discussion is over." He walked out before anyone could argue further. Elena followed him, her head held high despite the hostile stares burning into her back. In the hallway, Richard caught up with them. "You're making a catastrophic mistake," he said in a low, angry voice. "You don't know this woman. She could be working with whoever attacked us. This could destroy everything." Marcus turned slowly. "What could destroy us is not recognizing talent when it saves our lives. Elena has earned this position. End of story." He walked away, leaving Richard standing there, fists clenched, watching them go. That afternoon, Elena returned to Apex Solutions as a different person. She had a new badge, new access codes, a corner office with windows overlooking Elliott Bay. The same people who used to ignore her when she pushed her cleaning cart now stepped aside when she walked down the hallway. Some nodded respectfully. Others whispered behind her back. But Elena kept moving forward. She knew what she was capable of. Now she just had to prove it to everyone else. Marcus gave her space to work, and work she did. For 3 weeks, Elena rebuilt Apex Solutions security infrastructure from the ground up. She implemented new protocols, trained a hand-picked team of engineers who were willing to learn from her, and slowly earned the respect of those who gave her a chance. The company's recovery became news. Investors returned with renewed confidence. The massive deal was back on track. Everything seemed to be falling into place. But late one night, as Elena reviewed system logs, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Strange activity, unusual access patterns. Someone was still inside their network, probing defenses, testing weaknesses. Someone inside the company was still working against them. She grabbed her laptop and went straight to Marcus's office. He was there late as usual, reviewing quarterly projections. When he saw her face, he knew immediately something was wrong. "What is it?" he asked. Elena closed the door and pulled up her laptop. "Someone inside Apex is still accessing our systems illegally. These digital signatures match the original attack. Whoever tried to destroy us is still here." Marcus's expression hardened. "You're saying we have a traitor?" "I can't prove it yet," Elena admitted. "But yes, and whoever it is knows our systems intimately." For the next week, Elena worked in secret. She traced every suspicious login, every strange data transfer. She set up invisible monitoring systems that tracked activity without alerting the person behind it. She barely slept, barely ate, driven by the need to protect the company and the man who believed in her. And then, finally, she found it, a pattern in the access logs. Late-night logins from an administrative account, deleted files, encrypted messages sent to external servers. When she cross-referenced the timestamps and user credentials, one name appeared again and again: Richard Chun, the man who had questioned her from the beginning, the man who seemed so angry about her promotion. He was the one who had opened the door for the original attack. He was the enemy within. Elena sat back in her chair, her heart pounding. She suspected Richard didn't like her, but this was betrayal on a level she hadn't imagined. She gathered all the evidence onto a secure drive and walked to Marcus's office. It was late evening. Most people had gone home. The building was quiet except for the distant hum of ventilation systems. "Marcus," she said, her voice tense. "We need to talk. Now." He looked up from his work, saw her expression, and immediately gave her his full attention. "What did you find?" She plugged the drive into his computer. The screen filled with logs, timestamps, access records, proof of systematic betrayal. Richard has been using his credentials to access restricted data. He did it the night of the attack, and he's been doing it ever since. He's the one who let them in. He's the one who tried to destroy us. Marcus stared at the evidence in complete silence. His face went pale. "Richard? I've worked with him for 10 years. He helped me build this company from nothing." "I'm sorry," Elena said softly, "but the evidence is clear. He's been working against you." Marcus stood and walked to the window, his hands shaking. "If this gets out, we'll lose everything we just recovered. The board will panic. Investors will run. The deal will collapse." Elena nodded. "Then we don't let it get out yet. Give me a few more days to find out who he's working for and why." Marcus turned to look at her, and she saw both trust and fear in his eyes. "This is dangerous. Elena, if he finds out you're investigating him." She smiled faintly. "Taking risks is what got me here in the first place. You trusted me once. Trust me again." He took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, but please be careful." What neither of them knew was that Richard Chun had already noticed someone was watching him, and he was preparing to do whatever it took to protect himself. The game had changed. The danger was no longer just about computer systems and corporate espionage. It was personal now, and someone was going to get hurt before this was over. Over the next few days, Elena played the most dangerous game of her life. She set up fake databases filled with valuable-looking information, then watched to see if Richard would take the bait. She monitored his every digital move, careful not to leave any trace that he was being watched. She barely left the office, surviving on coffee and determination. Marcus would bring her food, worried about her, but she'd wave him off. "I'm fine," she'd insist. "We're close. I can feel it." Then one night, as she was packing up to finally go home and see her daughter, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She looked at the screen and felt ice run through her veins. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." Someone knew. Someone was threatening her. Elena immediately forwarded the message to Marcus. Within seconds, her phone rang. His voice was sharp with concern. "Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm still at the office," she said, trying to sound calmer than she felt. "But this proves we're getting close. They're scared. They're threatening you. Elena, we should call the police right now." "Not yet," she said firmly. "If we bring authorities now, whoever's behind this will disappear. We need to catch them in the act." The next morning, Elena arrived at work early. As she walked through the parking garage, something caught her eye, a small black device attached under her car. She crouched down to examine it, and her stomach dropped. A GPS tracker. Someone had been following her movements. They knew where she lived, where her daughter went to school, everything. She carefully removed it and brought it straight to Marcus's office. When he saw it, his face went white. "This has gone too far," he said. "These people know where you live. They know about your daughter." "Which means they're desperate," Elena replied. "Let's use that." That evening, they set a trap. Elena stayed late at her desk, pretending to work on a file filled with fake financial projections. Marcus waited in his darkened office, watching through the glass walls. The tension was almost unbearable. At 11:30 p.m., the security cameras flickered and went dark for just 3 seconds. Someone had disabled them. Then Richardson walked into Elena's office, trying to look casual, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Elena," he said, his voice too friendly. "Still working late? You're going to burn yourself out." "Just finishing up some things," she replied, not turning around. "What brings you here at this hour?" "Oh, just forgot something in my office. Saw your light on and thought I'd check in." He moved closer, his eyes fixed on her computer screen. "You know, You've really made quite an impression around here. Marcus's new favorite. I'm just doing my job, Elena said calmly. Your job, Richard repeated, and now his voice had an edge to it. Interesting how your job seems to involve investigating people who were here long before you arrived. He reached toward her computer. That's when Marcus stepped out of the shadows, turning on the lights. It's over, Richard. Richard froze. His eyes darted between them, and Elena could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much they knew. You think you understand what's happening here? Richard said, his voice turning bitter. You have no idea. Apex Solutions made deals with people who don't care what burns as long as they profit. I'm not the villain here. I'm just the one who got caught. You're working for Titanium Global, Elena said quietly, watching his reaction. They paid you to destroy us on the inside, so they could acquire us for pennies on the dollar. Richard's silence confirmed everything. Why? Marcus asked, and the pain in his voice was raw. I trusted you. We built this company together. Richard laughed, but it was a hollow, broken sound. You built this company, Marcus. I was just your employee. You got wealthy while I got a salary. Titanium offered me $5 million and an executive vice president position. What would you have done? I would have had integrity, Marcus said quietly. Integrity doesn't pay for your kid's college. Richard shot back. It doesn't cover your aging parents' medical care. You can afford principles, Marcus. I couldn't. Elena felt a flicker of understanding despite everything. She knew financial desperation better than anyone, but understanding wasn't the same as excusing. Security is on their way, Marcus said. You can explain all of this to them. Richard's face changed. For a moment, he looked panicked. Then he shoved past Marcus and ran for the door. Marcus started to chase him, but Elena grabbed his arm. Let him go, she said. We have all the evidence we need. He can't run far enough to escape this. But Richard knew the building too well. He reached the stairwell and disappeared. By the time security arrived, he was gone and all the security footage had been wiped. Elena and Marcus stood in the empty office, the weight of betrayal heavy between them. I should have seen it, Marcus said quietly. 10 years working together, and I never noticed. People are good at hiding when they need to be, Elena replied. But we found the truth. That's what matters now. She pulled up her laptop one final time and showed Marcus everything she'd uncovered. The money transfers, the encrypted emails, the connection to Titanium Global. Everything led back to them. This is bigger than Richard, she said. Titanium has been trying to take over Apex for years. They've been paying people inside our company, maybe even some of our board members. They want to destroy us from within. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, exhausted and overwhelmed. So what do we do now? Elena closed her laptop and looked him straight in the eye. We expose them, all of them, but we do it right, with lawyers and evidence and the truth on our side. That could destroy us, Marcus said. The scandal, the publicity, or it could save us, Elena countered. The truth always does eventually. Or it could save us, Elena countered. The truth always does eventually. Outside, the Seattle skyline glowed against the dark sky. Somewhere out there, Richardson was running. Somewhere, the executives at Titanium Global thought they'd won. But in this office, two people who had found each other at the worst possible moment were about to prove them all wrong. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of Marcus's life. Elena had gathered every piece of evidence they had and given it to Marcus's lawyers. Together, they built a case not just against Richard Chun, but against Titanium Global for corporate espionage, attempted hostile takeover, and fraud. Marcus had to make an impossible choice. He could keep everything quiet, protect Apex Solutions' reputation, and hope nobody ever discovered the betrayal. Or he could go public with the truth and risk everything. Elena sat with him the night before they had to decide. Whatever you choose, she said softly. I'm with you, but I'll tell you what I believe. The truth might hurt for a while, but lies hurt forever. Marcus looked at this woman who had walked into his life by chance, who had saved his company, who had become the most important person in his world. You're right, he said. "We tell the truth." The next morning, they called a press conference. The boardroom filled with reporters, cameras, flashing lights. Marcus stood at the podium with Elena beside him, and he told the entire story. The attack, the betrayal, Richard Chen's involvement, Titanium Global's conspiracy to destroy them. The media exploded. Headlines everywhere. But something unexpected happened. Instead of running away, customers and investors rallied around Apex Solutions. People admired the courage it took to expose corruption. They respected Marcus's honesty. They were inspired by Elena's story, a single mother who had been working as a janitor, who became a cybersecurity expert and saved a billion-dollar company. Within days, Richard Chen was arrested trying to board a flight to Vancouver. He confessed to everything, giving authorities enough evidence to launch a federal investigation into Titanium Global. Their executives were brought down one by one. Apex Solutions didn't just survive. It thrived. The company's value tripled. New clients came flooding in, wanting to work with a company that valued integrity over profit. Marcus's deal went through, bigger and better than ever. But the most important changes happened quietly, in moments nobody else saw. 3 months after everything settled down, Marcus had the old server room where Elena first saved the company completely renovated. He brought her down to see it one evening. When she walked through the door, she stopped in her tracks. "The Alvarez Innovation Center," she read aloud, seeing her name engraved on a gleaming plaque on the wall. Tears filled her eyes. "Marcus, you didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did," he said softly. "This company exists because of you. I exist because of you. You didn't just fix our computers. Elena, you reminded me what really matters." She turned to him, wiping her eyes. "And what's that?" "People," he said simply. "Not money, not power, not success. People who care enough to fight for something, even when they have every reason to walk away." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Elena's breath caught in her throat. "You once told me that you were just doing your job," Marcus continued, his voice shaking slightly. "But the truth is, you saved my life. Not just my company, my life. You reminded me how to see people, how to value kindness, how to be humble enough to accept help." He opened the box. A simple, beautiful ring sparkled in the light. "I don't want to lose you," Marcus said. "Not as my colleague, not as my friend. I want you in my life because you choose to be there, because you want to build something with me. Elena, will you marry me?" Elena looked at him, this man who had been arrogant and lost when she first met him, who had become humble and found through everything they'd endured together. "I chose this a long time ago," she said, smiling through her tears. "You just took a while to notice." Marcus laughed, slipping the ring onto her finger. "Then I'm finally paying attention." They stood there in the center they built together, surrounded by the quiet hum of servers and the glow of screens, and they knew that this was just the beginning. The story of Apex Solutions recovery spread far beyond Seattle. It became more than just a business story. It became a reminder that sometimes the people who can change our lives are right in front of us, doing work we don't even notice. Elena Santos, who once cleaned offices invisible and overlooked, became one of the most respected voices in cybersecurity. She spoke at conferences, mentored young women in technology, and never forgot where she came from. She kept her old uniform hanging in her office as a reminder that worth isn't determined by a job title. Marcus Reynolds learned to see people instead of just employees. He learned that vulnerability isn't weakness, that asking for help is strength, and that the best partnerships are built on respect, not hierarchy. On their wedding day, 6 months later, Elena wore a simple ivory dress and Marcus wore a suit. They stood in a small venue overlooking Puget Sound with their closest friends and family. Elena's daughter served as a flower girl, healthy and bright-eyed, a living reminder of why Elena had fought so hard. When the officiant asked if they had anything they wanted to say to each other, Elena spoke first. "You saw me when I was invisible," she said, her voice steady and strong. "You trusted me when you had no reason to. You gave me a second chance when the world had forgotten I existed. That's the kind of love that changes everything." Marcus squeezed her hands, his eyes bright with emotion. You taught me that miracles aren't things that happen to us. They're people who refuse to give up on us. You are my miracle, Elena, and I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that gift. As they walked out together, hand in hand, starting a new chapter, the sun was setting over Seattle. The same city that had witnessed Marcus's lowest moment was now witnessing his greatest joy. And somewhere out there, someone else was having their worst day. Someone else was feeling lost and broken and alone. But maybe, just maybe, they'd remember this story. They'd remember that the people who seem least important might be the very ones who save us. They'd remember that second chances are real. And they'd remember that even in our darkest moments, hope is just one encounter away. Because that's what this story is really about. It's not about computers or companies or corporate espionage. It's about the moment when two people at the absolute end of themselves found each other and realized that together they could build something stronger than either could alone. It's about looking at the people around us, really looking, and seeing their value even when the world has decided they don't matter. It's about believing that tomorrow can be better than today, even when today feels impossible. That's the miracle, not the technology, not the money, not the success. The miracle is that we can save each other if we're brave enough to let ourselves be seen and humble enough to ask for help. Marcus and Elena proved that. And they spent the rest of their lives making sure other people knew it too. If this story touched your heart, carry it with you. The next time you see someone society has overlooked, remember Elena. And the next time you're at your breaking point, remember that sometimes salvation comes in the most unexpected packages. Because the truth is, we're all one bad day away from needing someone to see us. And we're all one moment of kindness away from being someone's miracle.